Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason. I'm speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today I am starting a new list of a new decade of my favorite movies. This time I'm tackling the 1970s. This is my favorite top 20 favorite movies of the 1970s. Um, I'm gonna start just do five per video, so I'm gonna start with number 20 to number 16, and just say the 1970s is a very interesting decade. This is the first decade I wasn't born in that I'm covering. So these are all movies that I watched probably late 80s into the 90s and even till further on. Movies I caught on TV mostly that caught my eye, and some I watched since I was a kid. And but yeah, 1970s is a very interesting, I think, decade. Definitely, cinema really changed during this time period. We started getting more rated R movies, so the boundaries were really pushed to more violent movies, more sex, more nudity, yeah, more risque movies. Um, yeah, so a lot of things changed. I think of kind of this is the decade we really get more of the modern day horror movies like Halloween, The Exorcist was huge. That really kind of changed the horror movie genre. Of course, we got more gory, and that would ramp up with each decade. But it definitely was a big one for that. Uh, like I said, that more cursing during this decade. I mean, you do a lot more than before. Other decades, it was more family-friendly movies. This decade, I feel like we got more of the anti-hero, I would say, where your protagonist wasn't exactly a good person. He was sometimes a psychopath, sometimes a very not good person, but there was worse people in the movie, so you still root for that person. I think of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Taxi Driver, um, those kind of movies. The Godfather, where the characters aren't really morally good people anymore. Where it used to be different, where it used to be the good guys were clean cut, morally good people. So that really changed. I think, yeah, it started in the late '60s, coming into the '70s, um, definitely changed. I think we got some really great actors though, with people like Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson are some of the great actors that are throughout. And then we got like people like Meryl Streep and Faye Dunaway, Jane Fonda, some really great actresses. So I would say performance-wise, the '70s is one of the best decades for great performances. I would say some of my favorite performances come out of this decade. It's definitely a very more grittier decade. Clint Eastwood did a lot of violent movies like the Dirty Harry series. Was very popular. Uh, yeah, so just everything just really changed here, and I think it's an interesting decade to look at, really. Anyway, so and saying that, like I usually don't go for the dark, gritty movies. I'm usually more of the lighthearted, feel-good movies. But I do have some of the darker, grittier movies on my list, just because the performances are so good and interesting story-wise. Anyway, so that's why I got some of these, even though they're not movies I go to a lot. I still had to put them on my list because I had to recognize, how good they were made. There's some really good. I mean, there's some really popular movies that I don't have on my list, like Apocalypse Now. I know it's not on my list. I'm not a big fan of that movie. I know that was one of the big movies of the decade. Everybody has on top of their list. I don't have The Godfather Part 2. Just a little too long, a little boring for me. I'm sure there's other ones I'm not thinking of. But so saying that, go to my first movie on my list. Number 20 is a movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I forgot to write what years they came out. But it's one Best Picture I know in 1975. Big movie for Jack Nicholson. Won his first Oscar for Best Actor, where he plays, I think Murphy, his name is, and he's in an insane asylum. Um, and he doesn't really belong there. I believe he did something to try to get out of going to jail. He kind of declares himself insane, goes to an insane asylum. They're trying to figure out if he really is insane or if he's just saying that. And so then you meet a lot of interesting characters in this insane asylum. Of course, and then Nurse Ratched, the kind of really mean, bully nurse played by Louise Fletcher, who wins Best Actress for her role. Kind of intimidates everybody and kind of has her way, and does some terrible things throughout the movie. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit, like I said, dark, grittier movie than I usually watch. There's some tragic events that happen, but the performances are just so good, especially Jack Nicholson, of course, as the lead. Obviously, he's had such a great decade in the 1970s, and I think this is really a great performance by him. Also love, I'm forgetting his name now, but Brad Dourif, is that his name? No. He plays the stutterer in this movie. It's his very first movie, and he gets nominated for an Oscar and has this like very young, stuttering, nervous character. That's a really good performance. And then you got some other people. First performances: Danny DeVito and Chris Lloyd have really small roles, but the first movies for them. The guy who plays the chief, the big Native American, I thought was a great performance. Kind of underrated. He didn't get nominated. I thought he gave one of the best performances. But yeah, I love all performances, and I just love the idea that they're kind of in this insane asylum. They're being really manipulated by Louise Fletcher, or by Nurse Ratched, and this idea of trying to be free within the insane asylum, and how Murphy kind of brings about this freedom for everybody to not be, intimidated by the nurses and the system, and brings some kind of, I don't know, some kind of happiness, light to this group. And even though the ending is not exactly the most happy ending, I still really enjoyed the ending. Actually, I think that's actually a really good moment in the movie. Anyways, that's why One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Number 20 on my list. Number 19, I have All the President's Men, starring Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, Jason Robards. Movie about based on a true story. Two journalists who uncover the Watergate scandal of Nixon, and kind of able to get deeper into who's at fault and is Nixon at fault. Of course, obviously Watergate scandal, one of the biggest scandals in presidential history. Nixon ended up resigning, only president to resign because he probably would have been impeached. Not that I don't know that he had anything to do with the scandal or the Watergate break-ins, but that he tried to cover it up, and that kind of ruined him. And so the two journalists, I'm forgetting their names now, Bernstein, I think, is one of them. And there's another, I know the two, Woodward and Bernstein, I think. Two famous journalists that Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford are portraying. And it's really interesting. I love the investigative journalism of getting kind of these clues and going further and further and trying to figure out who's behind it. And then there's this, deep throat, this man behind the scenes that doesn't want to be seen, that's giving off information, and then all the just phone calls and trying to get people to talk. People don't want to talk because they don't want to get in trouble. So it's interesting how they get around all that. Anyway, so yeah, it's just a really good movie for kind of this mystery, aspect that I really enjoyed of it. And again, I don't know if it's how accurate it is, because Oliver Stone, I believe, wrote the screenplay, maybe. Something to do with, I thought Oliver Stone had something to do with it, and so I never trust him, and I don't know. So I don't know how accurate it is, but still as a movie, it was very compelling. So at number 19, I have All the President's Men. Number 18, I have a really dark, gritty movie called Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro, directed by Martin Scorsese. Jodie Foster plays a 14-year-old prostitute, I believe, or 13-year-old prostitute. And Robert Redford's Travis Bickle character, a bit of a psychopath kind of character. He's coming back from Vietnam, I believe, or he's a Vietnam vet. He doesn't know what to do with his life, so he becomes a taxi driver at night in New York, and he's just kind of crazy. And as the movie goes on, he gets crazier. And then he finds this 14-year-old prostitute played by Jodie Foster, who he kind of wants to save. He feels like she needs to be saved, like she's in this bad situation, and that he needs to go somehow save her from this bad situation. So he actually becomes kind of heroic at the end with what he wants to do, though he is a little bit psycho himself. And Robert De Niro gives such a great performance. I think the best performance of Robert De Niro's life. My favorite performance of his. Is ending. It's a little violent. Definitely some really dark stuff happens in the movie. He is a bit of a creep. He's kind of stalks a woman, and he does a lot of narration in his head, so he's kind of get this crazy feeling from him. But like I said, I love the performance from Robert De Niro and the kind of the character, the journey of the character, and I even like the fact that at the end he is doing a good thing by trying to save this 14-year-old prostitute. And I love the ending of him shooting up the pimps and stuff and trying to get her free. There's I love the whole image of the Travis Bickle character at the end, where he has the mohawk and he has the Vietnam jacket, the army jacket. Such a great look. Robert De Niro pulls it off really well. And then that last scene where he puts his finger to his head. I think he tries to shoot himself, but he's out of bullets. And the police come and he's like bleeding, and because he had the shootout, and he has the finger to his head and pretends like he's shooting himself. I mean, such a great image. Really well done. And like I said, a lot of people say that they don't know, the ending is kind of interpreted differently. Some say he's dead at the end. They kind of portray it at the end that he's still alive, and that he's still driving the taxi, and that he saved this girl's life basically, and that she went back home with her parents. So I like to think of a happy ending. To me, the happy ending makes it kind of a good movie, that he did a good thing at the end. But yeah, definitely not for everybody, Taxi Driver. But I think it's worth a watch just to see the performances. So that's where I put Taxi Driver number 18. Number 17, picked one of the best. Actually, my next two movies are really good, I would say, army comedies. Yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. War comedies, I guess I should say. So I like these a little bit lighthearted. Number 17 is a movie called MASH. Obviously, there's a sitcom show called MASH that went on for a long time. Very popular show. You probably didn't know there was a movie. I didn't know that for a long time. I remember finding out, like, oh, there's actually a movie called MASH that came out first before they made the TV show. Anyways, and it MASH is doctors in the Korean War. They're in these tents, and the wounded come and they have to fix them, so it's a very, stressful situation, obviously. And so it follows these doctors, and they're a bit cynical about the war. You got Donald Sutherland is in there. He's really good. He's really funny. Really great comic actor. Actually, he's in my next movie too. Really enjoyed Donald Sutherland in this, and all the characters are very good. And yeah, I just love the comedy aspect of. I mean, it's war. It's serious, but yet they take some unserious moments in the war to try to get through the war, because of all the terribleness and the stressful situations. They have to do things to get, to not go crazy during this time. And yeah, if you ever liked the MASH TV show, I think you'd like this movie. I think it's by Robert Altman, the director. But yeah, I think it's a really funny movie. Yeah, definitely check out MASH. That's my number 17 movie. And then the last movie I'm going to talk about is another war comedy. It is called Kelly's Heroes. It has a great cast. Stars Clint Eastwood. Has Telly Savalas, Don Rickles, Donald Sutherland. Like I said, in the last movie, he's in this one too. And it's Clint Eastwood, kind of the leader of this group, where they find out there's a bank that holds a bunch of gold, Nazi gold, I guess, and they decide to go to this town where there's like nobody in the town anymore, and get to this bank that they know there's a bunch of gold in. And so they're going to go rob this bank during the World War II, and become rich. And so instead of so they kind of go rogue. Instead of doing their usual mission of trying to kill bad guys, they just want to go get to this gold, get something out of the war. And yeah, really good comedy out of it. I really love Don Rickles, steals every moment. Obviously, if you know Don Rickles, absolutely hilarious. And then Donald Sutherland is so great. He's a tank commander. He's a bit of a hippie. He says, "There you go with your negative, your negativity." I think he says, "There you go with your negativity." He always says that to Clint Eastwood. Anyway, so yeah, it's another really great comedy that I would definitely check out, and it's not one people talk about very much. And I don't know if it's hard to find, but if you ever find it, yeah, definitely check out Kelly's Heroes. Yeah, another excellent movie. And so that's my number 20 through number 16 on my 1970s movie list. So feel free to comment what you think about any of these movies, and what your favorite movies of the 1970s are. And just thank you for watching this video, and just thank you to all my subscribers for supporting me. And I just want to say thank you and have a nice day.